Hey peoples of YouTube, today we're going to be remaking another fairy tale in Minecraft. Today's fairy tale is going to be The Colony of Cats. Hope you enjoy. Once upon a time there was a colony of cats who all lived together on top of the great big hill overlooking a village. Now this happened a very, very long time ago, so no one quite remembers much about these cats, except for the fact that literally nobody knew where they got their money from, how they lived up on top of a hill, but they did. They did. Just ignore it. Just ignore it. They're cats, they can do as they please. Anyways, they were rich enough that they held a servant all the time. Just all the time. Always had a servant. However, unfortunately, these cats were, quite picky. And any servant that they did have didn't really last that long. They just kind of got attacked by cats until they left, and it was great. However, even though they had a bad habit of attacking their servants, there still was plenty in abundance of women inside of the village who were totally down to go work for the cats because it paid well. It paid well. So many a woman would go up and try their hand at being the cat's servants, because apparently the cats can only have women as servants. I mean, what the heck, cats? What the heck? Anyways, on the other side of town, there lived a mother, her daughter, and her other daughter. Now, you see, the mother was a widow and only had these two children, and she was much fonder of the eldest daughter, Pepina, which made the younger daughter, Lazina, feel very, very sad, because, you know, that's kind of what happens when you're not the parent favorite. And, of course, as per any fairy tale, mother is terribly horrible to her younger daughter, and makes her do all the house chores, all the nastiness, and it's like, ah. Anyway, Luzina gets very, very sad and annoyed at this, so she's all just like, well, you know what? I'm gonna go work for the cats. And she left. True to her word, Lazina came up to the colony of cats' house and started to care for the cats. Now, she didn't understand the language of cats, as apparently some people can at this point of time in this fairy tale. But, you know, she couldn't understand them, but she was all just like, well, you know what, I'ma work hard, and surely it'll be a-okay. So she went right to work in the kitchen, making up dinner, all that great jazz. And she was a kind child, so she would go around, you know, and, like, fluff out the beds, and clean up and tidy up and like fluffing the bed. There we go. She would shake out the beds, make them all nice, clean up the cobwebs. Never before had the house of the cats been so well cared for. At the end of each month, a cat named Father Gato would come along down and say hello to all of his children. Never understood this part of the fairy tale. I mean, it's a cat. Where did it go? That they all call Father. I mean, either this guy was a very, very, very active cat, or I guess you could just be the cat that cares for all. Anyways, he comes along down from the barn to the top of the hill to come check out how all of his quote-unquote children are doing. And he came and talked to Louisiana, and she was all just like, hi-yo. And the cats were all like, oh my goodness, Father Gato. This is like the best human we've ever had. They so great, they so grand, we're all so happy. And Father Gato was just like, Pog, let's just make sure it stays that way. Father Gato came down once every month, for quite some time. However, Father Gato, he's a smart cat. And he realized that poor Louisiana, I don't know how to read. We're just chilling. It's either Lazina or Louisiana. It's one of the two, whichever. Anyways, Father Gato is just all like, hello, Lazina, and he's smart, so he realizes that poor Louisiana is looking sadder and sadder every single time he comes over. So he's all like, oh no, dear, what's the problem? And she like starts crying and is all like, oh my goodness, sir, Father Gato, sir. I feel so sad because, admittedly, as amazing as cats are, you can't exactly live with just them for several months without going a little bit cuckoo nutso. And she's all like, I pine for other people, and I want to see my mother and sister. And he was all just like, okay, Pog. Well then, before you go, let me give you a reward for all of the great work you've done for my children. So Father Gato brought Lazina down into the basement, where none of the cats nor Lazina had been allowed in before. And he then showed her 2 pits full of 2 different liquids. One full of liquid gold and one full of oil, and was all like, in which one shall I dip you in? Because apparently there is no choice for neither, it's just which one. Which one? And Luzina, who was all like, oh no, I could never be asked to be dipped in gold, was all like, dip me in the oil, please. And he was all like, oh, but oh no, you deserve so much better. And just with, like, magical cat strength, he just yeeted Lazina into, just get into. He yeeted Lazina into the gold, and then was all just like, bye. And then she just got dipped in there, and then popped out again. If you just pop out, never mind, they're all in there. Okay, Lazina popped out. We're just not gonna look over there. Lazina popped out of the gold, and she was, like, covered head to toe in gold, like a golden statue, other than her black hair. Just, and her rosy cheeks. Yeah, no, she's a statue of gold. And she was all just like, hi-yo, I'm Golden Pog. And Father Gato was all like, oh my gosh, you're so beautiful. Perfect. Just remember, on your way home, if you hear a chicken crow, make sure to turn your head towards it, just drowning in gold. Okay. Okay, well, if you hear the chicken crow, turn your heads toward it. And if you hear a donkey bray, look away. Gotcha. And Lazina was all like, okay then, thanks, bye, and she left. On her way home, Luzina, this is Luzina now, just chill out, it's just Luzina. Luzina was walking home when she heard a chicken call, and she was all like, oh my gosh, Father Gato told me to look towards the chicken, and she looked towards the chicken. And no sooner had she looked towards the chicken that a magical star appeared on her head. On her head, just chill out, it's on her head. Anyway, so she's just chilling along with the star, like, oh my gosh, oh wow, oh so pog, I'm like star now, this is amazing. When she heard a donkey call, and she was all like, whelps, just gotta look away, can't look at the donkey. And then she managed to get home nice and safe and sound, it was Pog. Lazina arrived home, and her mother and her sister were so amazed. They're all like, oh my goodness gracious, you're golden, you have a star, oh how Pog. And Lazina was all like, oh ho 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 ho, 'tis nothing, do not worry my friends, I'm still the same me, whatever else people do when they come back home golden and all that jazz. Anyways, her sibling was so sad that she was golden and she was not, that she was like crying, you know, because that's just what you do. And Lazina, trying to take a handkerchief out of her pocket, there's a pocket, she pulled it out, and it was gold! Ah! And her sibling and her mother were all like, oh my goodness gracious, gold, how exciting! And they lived very, very happily for quite some time, because all of the gold that was coming out of Lazina's pockets, it just went to went to her sibling and her mother. That's just where it went. Anyways, after a while, the gold unfortunately ran out, because, well, you only carry so many handkerchiefs, apparently. You only carry so many. And then Pepina was all like, you know what? I'm gonna go see if I can't get some of the gold from the cats for myself. So Pepina came to work for the cats. And no sooner had she said her name, than all the cats were like, oh my goodness gracious, you're related to Luzina? Oh my gosh, that must mean you're amazing. And they greeted her with open arms. However, no sooner had she come in, she, like, slammed the kitchen door in the cat's face, and they were, like, so offended about this. Because, like, Zena had let them just look inside of the kitchen without having to stick their head through the door, because the cats enjoyed that. Anyways, later on, a mischievous cat came in through the window and was all like, hey yo, and, like, Lazina's sister was all just like, die. Didn't actually kill the cat, did not mean to kill the cat, but the cat got quite the walloping and was very, very sad about that. Pepina was not a very good child, not a very kind child, not very good at the cleaning, never having done it before. So everything just kind of, like, gathered cobwebs, and it, didn't end up very nice. And so finally, on Father Gato's next visit, he came in to see the new servant, and Pepina was all like, hey yo, and Father Gato was like, hey yo, and he went to go talk to the cats, and the cats were all just like, oh my goodness gracious, Father Gato, Pepina is horrible. She, like, walloped that cat who came into the kitchen that day. His paw is so swollen it looks like it was broken. And they were all like, oh my goodness gracious, there is cobwebs everywhere, the meat is not properly cooked, panic, panic, panic. Oh yeah, and then this random part of the book, the random part of the fairy tale, Agrippina's kittens all just starved at her side after Pepina here forgot them in the attic. Lovely. Anyways, upon hearing this, Father Gato was, like, enraged, so he was all like to Pepina, come here, child, into the basement. So Father Gato brought Pepina down to the basement, where he asked Pepina if she should be dunked inside of the gold or inside of the oil, and Pepina, who was not exactly the most modest of all people, was all like, into the gold, because, like, gold, you know, pug. However, Father Gato was all, like, triggered, so he was all like, ah! And just yeeted Pepina into the oil, like, ah! And Pepina came out, like, all, like, annoyed, like, oh my goodness gracious, you just dipped me in oil. However, Father Gato was not finished, for he proceeded to just yeet Pepina into a pile of ashes, where she got covered in ashes and oil, and it was sticky, and it was nasty, and she was like, ah! You know, panic. And Father Gato, who was not inside of the oil, was all just like, go away, be gone, never come back again. And by the way, when you're walking along, if you hear a donkey bray, make sure to look at it. And Pepina was all like, oh no, and left. And so Pepina went running and crying home like, mother, 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 I'm covered in ashes and oil, and oh my, it's so terrible, I'm panicking. And no sooner had she gone crying home, she heard a donkey! And she was all like, oh my goodness gracious, donkey, donkey, donkey. However, no sooner had she looked at the donkey than a donkey tail just sprouted from her head. Sprouted from her head. And she was all like, oh no! And continued running, crying home to Mama. And so Pepina returned home, and the mother was incredibly offended that Pepina was covered in oil and coal, and was all like, well, you know what, this is all your fault. This is all your fault. And so the mother just, like, yeeted Luzina into a well, because that's just what you do when you're angry people. No, you just, like, yeet him into a well. Seems legit. However, we need a little bit of backstory now, because while Pepina was off with the cats, Lazina here was just chilling and picking some flowers, when a prince so happened to be strolling by, and he was all just like, oh my goodness gracious, you are so beautiful. And then he was all like, wow, and he just, like, kept coming back to meet her, until eventually, like, the third day of this, he was all like, will you marry me? And as per fairy tale tradition, she said yes. Yay! And now, back to the present, where Pepina had been wrapped up inside of a veil and a big wedding dress by her mother, so that she could try to pass off Pepina as Lazina. So when the prince came strolling along, he was all like, oh my goodness, is this my bride? And the mother was like, yes, 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 yes. And he was like, can I see? And she was like, no, because you see, no, it's just tradition. It's just tradition that she must stay inside of a veil until you get married. And he was all just like, okay then. Because, you know, he was a little bit shy and didn't want to have to deal with the mother. Because apparently mother-in-laws can be a little bit scary. However, as the prince and his, quote-unquote wife were walking past the cat house, they all started singing, mew, mew, mew. Prince, look right behind you, for the person you think is Lazina is really Pepina. And he was all like, ah! And he, like, ripped off the veil and was like, oh my goodness gracious, this is not Lazina. This is not Lazina. Ah! And so the prince rushed back to Lazina's house, marched up to the mother, and was all like, oh my goodness gracious, this is not my wife. This is not my wife. where is my wife? And so as he's like over here like ah-ing, the mother is also being like ah-ing, and like in her panic she's like, okay, here she is. She's in the well. And she releases Luzina. Then the prince and Luzina happily get married, and she is known as the most beautiful queen in the land with her beautiful golden skin and her pretty star. And she lives happily ever after. Yay! You know, honestly, actually, I actually don't have much commentary about this story other than this is like basically just a Cinderella story. But I do have one comment, and that is the cats. The cats. I mean, for one thing, in the fairy tale, some people can understand them. Okay, well, you know what? I can get past that. It's a fairy tale, but I mean, why on earth is Father Gato so buff? Why was he able to just like yeet people into like barrels of gold and oil? Why does he have gold and oil just inside of his basement? Well, okay, well, you know what? It's a fairy tale. It's a fairy tale. I need to stop over analyzing these. Hope you enjoyed my rendition of The Colony of Cats. Hope you have a great day.